Good afternoon and welcome to Hard Talk. It is your host, Marsha Walker. I know we have David somewhere in the back there. Joining us this week, we do have MP Rodney Charles. Let me just confirm because he should be here by now. Hi, MP, are you?
Good afternoon, Marsha. I'm seeing his device on, but he has to turn on his microphone and video.
Okay, let me just let him know. Um, Okay. Well, that's okay. We will talk in the meantime. I sent him a message. I'll keep my phone nearby just in case that he has an issue. So we have MP Rodney Charles who will be talking. Pardon, David?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yes. So we're talking salaries. Of course, there has been a proposal, and some say it's an independent proposal, so it's not mischief by the politicians wanting a salary increase. David, do you have a view on that? What we should do is let persons join in one time, because I feel like a lot of people are going to have a view on whether or not now is the right time for the Prime Minister to have an increase, and the opposition leader, I mean, it's something like a 70-something, 73% increase that the opposition leader stands to benefit from if this paper is laid in it has to be laid in Parliament, saying that this is what the Salary Reviews Commission has suggested, and the parliamentarians have to vote on it. And once it's passed, okay, well, we have Rodney Charles. MP Rodney Charles is with us. So David, can you just put up the WhatsApp numbers and all of those things so that persons can log on? Of course, you can comment on Facebook. We will see your comments. You can comment on YouTube. We'll see your comments. You can WhatsApp us at 318-1021. So that's 868-318-1021. You can call locally 222-TALK. So that's 222-8255 if you're in the US or Canada. You can call toll free at 866 525-1099. I think I got all those numbers. Welcome, MP Rodney Charles. MP, how are you doing?
Could you please unmute your microphone?
Oh, you're okay. You're still you have to unmute. Uh-oh. I think you pressed X.
Well, you were asking me, Marsha, is that buddy really independent?
Now, of course, that's always the question for everything. In fact, we had a committee that would have suggested certain things in the constitutional reforms. We had a committee set up, ordered by the Prime Minister, to go through the Constitution and to suggest what are the things that need to be changed. And that would have been one of our guests last week was Dr. Terence Farrell. So one of the things that he would have suggested is the way that all those commissions operate. So yeah, that is obviously something that the country always, that's the first question we ask. Are these people independent? So I don't know. I mean, they're supposed to be, right? Yeah. Rico Myers, good evening, Marsha. I hope you all are having a blessed day. Well, listen, we're alive in Trinidad and Tobago. That is blessing. God has favored us to be in the land of the living. Although, of course, if we're going to heaven. David, you know one of my favorite verses in the Bible is to live as Christ, to die as gain. So I am not one of those who are too particularly afraid of dying, because I think heaven is going to be so much lovelier. But for now, while we are here, we will fight for justice and we will fight for change. And so David, no, I don't think. Rico, could you tell us, do you think that it's independent? I think a lot of people do have issues with that. After Dr. MP Charles, MP Rodney Charles, after he comes on, we're actually going to be talking to Gary Griffith. And I know that we will talk a little bit about the Police Service Commission, because those members were voted in recently in Parliament as well. And then, we would have seen the entire fiasco with the last Police Service Commission and the merit list and pulling this and ending up with no commissioner of police. So yes, there are concerns about these commissions. MP, you have to unmute. That would be the bottom left. You're seeing a little microphone. Oh, every time MP tries to unmute, he is leaving the studio. Oh, Lord, see. Let me see if I can take a picture of my screen and show him. I mean, I think MP is one of the technologically savvy people. So I don't think it's a, I don't know, but I'm going to just. Oh. Maybe he's on his phone using it, so that's why he's not messaging me back either. Mm-hmm. All righty. Well, I believe most quote unquote independent bodies have been corrupted by political organizations. So that's a comment that's coming on from YouTube. And I think, David, that really is the concern. And so, funny enough, we are going to, and I don't want to talk before, we bring our guests on, but when we talk to Gary Griffith, we would see, the collapse of states in high profile cases involving the TTPS. And so what you're seeing all around is that citizens are not feeling as though there is really a space for things not to be corrupted, from TTPS to the different quote unquote independent bodies, and I say quote unquote because that is what Rico is saying. Hey, it's independent. And so you have the judicial system, there are just so many institutions that seem to be collapsing, and the regular person on these streets is kind of going, is anything working? Is there any way for us to really get justice? And if the criminal element sees that they can get away, then of course that gives incentive. I don't know, David, if you ever heard the saying, but a man is as faithful as his options, or he only sorry when he get catch. And that may ring through for a lot of different things. Children tend to only be sorry when you catch them and they're about to get in trouble. So the truth is that consequences have always been used from ever since as something for keeping order. If there is a fear of getting caught, if there is a fear of a consequence, then that is a tool that is used to draw people in line. Similarly, if you perform well and you know that you can get a prize or you could get promoted or whatever, then those are incentives. So you have positive incentives and you have negative incentives. And I think right now what is happening in the criminal world is that we are presenting a case where there are a lot of quote unquote positive incentives for them, but there are no negative consequences. So there seems to be a thought, a mood
Marsha,
that's,
when I think about that question that you asked me there a while ago, I've always lobbied for, or I've always thought that these bodies should be elected. Once
yeah,
you are appointed, I don't think you're all that independent.
yeah. And I agree. I do think so even in terms of the presidency, that was something that came up in the constitutional reform, where the president, because funny, we drove past president's house today and my daughter was asking, so how do they become the president? And I was explaining the whole process, the electoral college, and really and truly, and I had to say, I guess it will help if you're in with the sitting government, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who have to vote, so the opposition would have given their suggestion, but it didn't really matter because they didn't have enough seats to affect a vote anyway, right? So it was neither here nor there. So a lot of these things, there is the perception that it's all rigged and it's really not a fair and independent process. But even the MPs, when you think about the way we talk about them being elected, but they're not really, if you so basically what, because I mean it's an election year, right? And for example, if I wanted to serve the people of Diego Martin, you first have to become part of the UNC's screening committee to even have a say in that, right? Because persons may say, well, we want you to be our UNC representative. We want to have an opportunity to vote for you. But if I'm not favored by the UNC executive, then I'm not going to even have an opportunity to have my name on the ballot, to have people to vote for me. So before you can even reach to the space where somebody can vote for you, you have to be appointed. You have to be selected in a process that, whether we like it or not, is not democratic. It doesn't require, let's say, every single nomination going before the UNC, people, but that is where I think that US primaries are important, where they have this real vigorous kind of inter competition and stuff like that. I do think that we there are some places where we are. Some people will say we are a young democracy. I don't know. We are, I guess. But I think that's a question I asked last week, David, when I asked, are we going forward? So we could say that yes, we're young, but I can look at my 5-year-old and say that her growth is on track. So even though I know she cannot do things that my 15-year-old can do, I know that if she continues along a certain growth pattern, she will certainly probably surpass her 15-year-old. But then you can look at a growth pattern and say, but wait, she's regressing. For example, maybe let's say she was standing and walking, or she was walking happily at 1 year old. What if by 5 years old she's no longer walking and she's now crawling and she's no longer speaking? I mean, she's very articulate. She could come here and talk for the whole time. If MP Rodney Charles do come on and you ask her to talk, she could talk. She could be interviewed. What if one day you realize, but instead of increasing her word capacity is decreasing, and so all of a sudden she's going back to gaga goo goo, and not being able to speak. So there is one thing to say we're young, but then there's another thing to say, are we growing as we should? Are we hitting certain milestones to suggest that after a certain amount of time as an independent nation, we are where we're supposed to be, and we're on target for getting there and getting wherever at, after 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 100 years. And I think that everybody, I don't think there's anybody who, other than, the sycophants, other than those who just want to be positive to make sure that their party doesn't look bad, I don't think there's anybody that disagrees that we are not on a positive, upward trending growth pattern. So yeah, there are a lot of things to be changed. Whenever I press unmute, it says enter without mic or camera. Also, my browser does not allow mic or pics. Okay. Try no camera, but the mic. So we can, hopefully we'd hear him. We'd hear you, even though we can't see you.
I think it's time we seeing that we follow trends set by like the UK and America and even the EU. I think we should adapt to these changing perspectives, if I should use a word like that, where governance is concerned, because we can't be using an old school constitution that will affect or have any kind of effects on the modern day way of living now. We've gone past.
No, the history, David, of this constitution, and this is where, I mean, as much as we credit Eric Williams for our independence, and that's something that we could argue either way, but the constitution as it stands was not the constitution that those who knew best, they were the ones who were the authority matters at the time. When they presented the constitution, in fact, Eric Williams at the time would have been the person who would have had control, and he had the power to choose that constitution. And he knew that the way that the constitution was set up then would not have favored the PNM. And these are some open and honest conversations that we have to have, because we want to be, we talk about being loyal to the PNM, and that, I hear people say, thank God for the PNM, where would we have been? And I say, well, maybe without them, we would have been a lot further, because we would have certainly had a constitution that more resembles the constitution that we want now. We would have had things like proportional representation. So we would have had a space for smaller parties, which means that we're not beholden to these two major parties, where some people say that, they're, the same coin, two sides of the same coin, or whatever. So certainly, I think if it was not PNM in control at the time of independence, we would have had. So it's not even adapting. We just need politicians who will choose based on what's best for the country rather than what's best for their own agenda. How do we make that happen? Well, I've given my suggestion. I have said that we need to move away from, and when I say we, I mean individuals, because I consider, you have to change what you can change. You can't. So I am generally not one to fight for constitutional reform, because constitutional reform can only come if somebody gets into power with like 33 seats. That ain't happening. And now you have to depend on somebody getting into power with 33 seats and having such power doing the right thing with it, right? So that is too much to me. That puts me in a victim position, and I don't like to be in a victim position. I don't like to have to depend on what somebody else does. I don't like to have to depend on whether a politician has enough integrity, and those kinds of things. So what can I do as a citizen, and what can each of us do in our own space? Well, for example, NTA has named some of their candidates. PNM has named some of their candidates. I don't know what UNC is waiting on. But what you can do, for example, I live in Diego Martin West. I've seen that NTA has named their candidate. I do know him personally. So that's, for me, it's a lot easier. I know him personally. He actually assisted me in my local government campaign, because he is a local government practitioner. But I think that what you should do is get to know the candidates. So get to know the activists in your area. Get to know the different parties. If it is that, David, where do you live? Which constituency are you a part of?
I'm from Deep South. I'm from Library.
Right. So Library, for example, UNC has a Library office. I would suggest that you visit that office. I would suggest that you speak to Victor Roberts. Victor Roberts would be the constituency coordinator from UNC for Library. Whether he will be the candidate or not, I'm not sure. I've seen he's been speaking out against the current leadership, so maybe he wouldn't be. But what you can do is go and have a conversation with the activists in the community. So go into Library's office and get to know what they stand for. Go and meet your MP and see, is the MP going back up? As soon as any candidate is announced, I suggest that anybody who is serious about change in this country get to know the person. I did not vote in 2015, and it was simple. It was, I could tell you who the people were. So we had Fuad Abubakar, we had Philip Alexander, and I had Avenel Hector. My mom knew Avenel Hector, but I was not prepared to vote based on religion. That's not something that I was necessarily prepared to do, because she didn't come to my church. She's not attending my church. So I didn't even know if it was just because, there are some people that may use religion conveniently. I had no idea about who this person was, and I could not take anybody else's word for it. So I did reach out. I knew Philip Alexander enough to know that even though I think that, I don't know if his heart is in the right place or whatever, I didn't think that he was MP material based on enough interaction with him and enough. In fact, he had asked me to be on his campaign in 2015. That was when we had a lot of independent candidates. We had a lot of independent candidates. And that's where Gary Griffith had formed the Alliance of Independents, which turned out to be a new party. But what it was supposed to be was an alliance. So everybody remains independent, but we will share our stage space and whatnot, share whatever resources we can, because as an independent person, it is more difficult to campaign. So I attended these things. They'd actually said, they were trying to get me to run that year in Diego Martin Central as an independent candidate. And that was my first introduction, I guess, to inside of politics. And I knew, as I said, I could not vote for Philippine, which I had said up front. I'd said to him, I cannot vote for you. I don't trust you enough. Fuad Abu Bakr, I could not vote for him. I did not, agree with his principles and policies and stuff. And so there was Avenel Hector, who was representing the COP. The UNC, as usual, did not put anybody in Diego Martin. I was the first person from UNC for how many ever years. So I reached out to her and I asked questions like, how do you propose to handle towing the party line? And I thought that was a question I needed any representative to answer. David, you understand towing the party line by chance?
Yes, I understand what you mean by that.
Right. So for those who are listening and don't understand, the chief whip, the person in charge of the parliamentary business for the opposition is called the chief whip. The other person is leader of government business. But whatever it is, the political party will say, okay, this bill, this is our position on it, and this is how you are to vote. And we follow a British system which says that's how you vote. And so it's called towing the party line. So if a bill comes and even though you don't agree with the party's position, you are mandated to vote for it. And that is so people say, well, all you're representing the party, all it is we vote all it in, but you're not voting for us, you're voting for the membership and stuff. So there are some things that need to change when it comes to how that works. I have said things like, for example, we have apps and whatnot, right? So we must be able, as an MP, when you get in there, let's say I was the MP for Labre, I must be able to say, okay, this is the bill before you. This is what the bill says, because some of the bills are really, it's a lot of legal jargon. So you have to be able to break this bill down to the average human being, explain to them how this bill impacts their lives and what voting for or against means. And then you get their feedback on it. And you should be able to go in Parliament and say, listen, I have met the various stakeholders, the schools or, the businesses, whatever the bill is, who are the people most impacted by it? And I have met, out of the 29,000 residents in my constituency, I've met 10,000 of them. And 19,000 may say, well, they don't want to be part of it. So they don't have a say, full stop. But out of the 10,000 persons who, whether it be that you put a community board notice or something, or however, apps or whatever, 10,000 persons have said that no, they don't want to vote for this, right? And either you fail to get the buy-in or you don't get the buy-in or whatever, you don't get the support. And then you have to go to the opposition. So the opposition should caucus. And then you say to the opposition that, I've met with these various stakeholders and this is their opinion on it. Now, I don't think that at that stage, every single person should have a vote on it. Because there are persons who will not be properly informed, but I think that the way that we pass legislation, etc., really isn't the best that it can be. So anyway, getting back to, I had asked Avenel, I had sent a message asking, about that, and I never got a reply. You know what I say to anybody? If you cannot get through to a candidate during election time, you guaranteed cannot get through to them when they get into power. Because this is the time that candidates are most available. It's the time they walk. It's the time they stand publicly for people to find them. It's the time that they should be checking messages because they do not want to miss a potential vote. So for me, not being able to get through when I asked a question during your campaign period, that for me meant that I was not prepared to give you my vote because there was no opportunity for me to get to know you. So yeah, there was that. And that is the kind I would like to see the maturity coming out of each citizen when they vote, because I think that your vote is very, very important. I don't think you should vote based on propaganda. I don't think you should vote based on who your parents tell it to vote for. I think that Now, obviously, as a Christian, I would vote based on who I believe to lead with the best integrity, who I think will be guided by good, sound biblical practice. So that is something that would factor in for me. That's very important. There are some people and there are some religions that don't believe that females should even be in politics. So for them, they may go. They don't even need to get to know me because they don't think that women should be in politics. So they would just X me off of the ballot one time. Each individual must understand how they vote and and take time to do that. It's very important that you really, really understand why you're voting and how you're voting. And I think that that is the first space for us to improve the way that we vote. Um, I don't know, David, what's your opinion on everything I've just said there?
Well, I quite agree with you because well, where I am concerned, I think when they hit the camping trail, or even while they're walking around and stuff, I too will ask them very pertinent questions about representation, and based on what they say, and especially when they hit the podiums of the camping trails, I think well, it's been a long time I've been thinking like that, the mudslinging and the picong and thing. I don't mind a little picong in between, but the
Yeah,
mudslinging and the divisive way of like we and them and thing. I'll scratch
yeah,
you off my thinking list immediately. I think they should be addressing the issues in a way as to say to the voter that they're looking to have on their slate, or who will vote for them, if I should say it like that. You must impress me.
yeah,
You must impress me by your method of approach. You must impress me about your concerns of the issues that are really, 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 really important for community development and, by extension, nation development.
yeah,
Anytime you're on the mudslinging thing and you're trying to get me into this race kind of mental kind of approach
yeah,
to, I'm going to scratch that off my list instantly.
yeah,
So, like you, I have a I try sometimes I say I'm not going to vote
yeah,
because I'm not hearing what I want to hear.
yeah,
Even from those who are incumbent, I don't hear what I
yeah,
want to hear. And they
yeah,
just create a sort of situation, like you said, the people who are on their slate or on their side toe the party line. I'm not one to toe any party line.
and
I
yeah,
always tell them I'm on the white line and I'm on the fence. You
yeah.
have to really impress me for me to come out and vote for you.
And it's unfortunate because I do think that not voting is not it's not an answer, right? It's not sustainable. In fact, I tell people all the time that is why I decided, in 2015 I had said no. I'm not prepared to do frontline politics. I will speak out, I will hold government accountable, etc. But I didn't want to be part of it. In 2015, when I stayed home, when I felt as though I did not have someone to vote for, I said, well, you know what? You've got to be the change that you want to see. And if you feel as though there was no one to vote for, then you best give them somebody to vote for. And that has to be you. if
Mhm.
if nobody else is stepping forward, then
Yes.
you've got to step forward. So I do think that, we have it's sad. I had said that I wasn't prepared to vote in 2025 because I did not see anyone who was worth my vote. With NTA coming out and naming Paul Nahus, I have said that I'm prepared to give him my vote. Um, Although I've put a sort of like a but with it because he is a sitting alderman in the Diego Martin Borough Corporation, and I have found that he is accessible. So when persons come to me and they have issues, I am able to put them on to him. He is able to answer, etc. So that accessibility will definitely make me want to vote for him. I know that he has good ideas. I know that he is not a yes person, which I think is important. And he has, what I also think that is very important. important that I need to see from any politician is that you are able to make money outside of politics. And the reason I say that is because I don't want anybody who needs to say yes when they very well know that they shouldn't because they're afraid to lose an income. I find that to be a very dangerous space. So, what I need from a politician, very importantly, is their ability to earn a decent income, a significant income outside of politics. In
Something
fact,
that's
I would like,
transparent.
yeah, but I would like to know, you shouldn't be honestly taking taxi and then all of a sudden, because you come into politics, you're driving a big fancy car. Because then I know that you'll struggle to want to give that up. It won't be as easy to give up. So thank God that Gary Griffith is always so. Oh my goodness! Do you see what this man typed? He is so ridiculous. And I was saying something, and I can't even remember what I was just saying. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, right. So I think. I think that it's difficult for me to think that there's somebody who is struggling to make financial ends meet, because then when you come into power and all of a sudden you have this salary and whatnot, and you have all these tax exemptions and everything, the ability to make a stand is harder, because then you think, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to feed the family? When you're like Gary and could buy yacht and thing, even when you're cussing the prime minister and cussing this one and cussing that one, all kind of thing, and you clearly have a proven track record of running business, I was saying, Gary, that I was explaining some of the things that I look for in a representative. So I was actually talking about Paul and saying that, he is somebody that I would be prepared to vote for. And I'd spoken about his accessibility, that he is a sitting alderman, and I have been able to get through to him. I have been able to get answers from him on certain issues and whatnot. And how we got into it is because I said what I also like about him is that he has a certain level of success outside of politics, because it helps with your integrity when I could see that you can build a life outside of politics. If your only income and your only opportunity to earn an income has ever been politics, and outside of politics you do not show the ability to earn politics, then for me that is a red flag, because you may not have the ability. It would be harder for you to make the stances that we need to see from politicians, because you'd be thinking, well, how I go feed my family, how I go this, how I go that, because you never was successful in any interview, and it's the only job you was ever able to get. Those kinds of things are red flags for me. So that's how we got into, when you joined in, and I said, Gary would have had a proven track record in things other than politics. Because we were talking, basically, what I was saying was what I would like to see from the citizens. We are in an election year. I was saying that NTA had named some of their candidates. PNM has named some of their candidates. Don't know what UNC doing, what they're waiting on. But once a candidate has been named in an area that you live in, you should start to get to know the person. You should try to reach out to them. You should be asking questions of what is important to you. Find out who these people are. Because we need to get past this kind of, well, you vote because your mother says so, or you vote because of the color, or you vote because of or their perceived religion. We need to vote in a more mature manner. So that's where we were. But we're getting right into your interview time anyway. So let me just answer. Shanika York, good afternoon to you, my love, and blissful day to you all, to you as well. She is saying blissful day to everyone. So welcome, Shanika. Thank you for joining us. So we had a comment and a question. I asked a question, but everybody answered basically. And I know that this ties in to some of what you will be speaking about, because we were talking about the Salaries Review Commission. And of course, it's just another one of the commissions that are supposed to be independent. And the first question that came up was, are they really independent? And, we had a listener say that all these independent, and they put in quotation marks the independent. So they're saying all the independent bodies have been corrupted by the political organizations. So I did bring up the issue of the merit list, and I told them that you would be joining. So it wasn't just the salary reviews commission, but we spoke about the police service commission and all these commissions. The way the president is elected, there's a feeling in Trinidad and Tobago that what is supposed to be independent isn't truly independent. Over to you. So you can start with that.
Hi, good afternoon. No, but that is the unfortunate thing. The Constitution was drafted in such a way to ensure democratic dictatorship, give the impression of dictatorship, because the president, say what you want, the president is selected by the prime minister. The prime minister selects the president. He or she handpicks the president because he or she will now go to cabinet, go to all the other members of the electoral college and explain to all of them, because you have the majority of all the persons in the upper and the lower house. You say, I am going to vote for A&R Robinson, for Maxwell Richards, for Powers, for whoever, and they're going to vote for it. So the prime minister, who is the political leader of a party that has the majority, selects the president, and the president will handpick the individuals who would have been selected by the prime minister. That is the only way that anyone could perceive that someone who applied for commissioner of police did not come in the top 20 of people who applied for commissioner and deputy commissioner in Earl Christopher, got 30% lower than others by international experts. And you change the police service commission that Judith Jones and those jokers who left, thank God, could put her first. The only way. There's no way that Judith Jones and Maxine King and these people could be so incompetent that someone like Earl Christopher could not come in the top 20 by experts who have selected commissioners around the world, and they placed her first. That is how it works. And so again, it is democratic dictatorship. The Salary Reviews Commission.
So somebody's calling it a faux democracy. FAUX, a faux democracy.
Yeah. And I call it democratic dictatorship. So that is what it is. Until we have both the upper and both political parties, in whoever's in government and opposition, decide to say that we'll change the president based on a one-man, one-vote, where the president will now be selected without under the whip of a virtual person who selected him or her. Because that's what, listen, you voted for me. I am now obligated to adhere to what you want, unless, of course, you operate like A&R Robinson and said, okay, you got me in here now, it's my turn to get back at you after the 1818. That's the only time you saw a president stand up with moral and spiritual values, because it was payback time. Other than that, the president is going to say, listen, he put me here, and all it takes is somebody, a whisper, something, a note that will pass, and all of a sudden, these people, and it may not be true, but the perception is there. That is enough to destroy democracy. The perception that the president is a political appointment of the politician. So who the president selects. And it even goes to the independent senators. Sometimes you will see some independent senators jump high, jump low. They will, 95% of their decisions is in favor of the government, who was, and remember who appointed
even that, even after they debated in a manner that suggested they were voting one way, and then you go, what? But you just debated totally against your own votes.
That's how it is.
Yeah. And then you see them sit on different boards and different commissions and different places and have this position here and that position there. And those are political appointments. So again, that affects the perception of your independent senators when you see them.
Yeah, correct. So it's independent senators, the chief of defense staff, the commissioner of police, all the state board representatives indirectly, even the chief justice. So it all becomes political. That is what is dictatorship. That is similar to what you see in other countries where it is you speak about dictatorship. But one man is the person who has full authority. So you could appoint a president and say, listen, you know who put you there. So I put you in, I could find a way to get you out. And by the way, I want these people as my independent senators. And I'm not in any way casting anything on the present or past prime minister or the present or past president. But there is that perception. As a police service commissioner, again, I will double down on it. There's no way that Judith Jones and Maxine King and the other Maxine could be so incompetent. When you look at Earl Christopher's ratings by the qualified experts, the UK experts, when they did it through KPMG, when I was selected, and I got my 82% and she got 50%. Her ratings, mock media conference was like 7 out of 15. Role fit 6 out of 15. Interview 42 out of 100. And these were by experts. You're telling me that in 3 years she just transforms from not coming in the top 20 to come to number 1? No. This obviously had to be some political, and some of the people who she defeated were those who defeated her easily by the experts. So if it was any example to show manipulation of these so-called independent bodies, would be that.
Yeah, and we're seeing it because the ratings that you would have gotten. So if you could talk a little bit about that, because there was an article that came out that spoke a little bit about, hold on, I want to make sure and quote the article correctly. So you would have gotten a rating of something like 80%. And, now that, a poll shows that the public is fearful and lack of trust in the TTPS. So there is, I think it's something like 50-something% or whatever that, the ratings have dropped drastically from when you were the commissioner of police. So it's 80% compared to 59%. No. That was okay. So 80% was for you back then. And then 59 was the TTPS. You were working on getting it up. I think that it was the highest at the time.
Yeah.
And now it's the lowest it's ever been. And the poll is saying that the citizens are by and large fearful. They do not trust the TTPS. And I want to so you have that. We're tying that in. But then I want to also tie in the two cases. And I mean, 2 cases in 1 week really doesn't look good. One would have been, a high-profile extortion case. And I know extortion is a massive issue right now because, one, we want the economy to boom. But now that businesses are trying to boom, it's almost like, well, criminals used to affect the customers, but now the criminals are affecting the customers and the businesses. Businesses are closing. Businesses are afraid to even be successful anymore because now businessmen getting killed if you don't pay this security fees, So you have this high-profile case with, I think it's 5 police officers were involved, 7 police officers were involved. Alleged extortion, and then the case collapses. Just a few days after, you now have 5 police officers involved in allegedly taking a bribe to, turn a blind eye or whatever. And that case has now collapsed. So, I mean, you spoke about the Chief Justice, MP Dinesh Ramboli would have spoken about, one, there are 2 sides of it. The police officers now do not have an opportunity to clear their name.
Correct.
So it is an injustice to them.
That's right.
Because the rest of the country knows their names and they will continue to think that they are rotten and they would not have had an opportunity to mount a defense. But you're now signaling as well that if they were guilty, that, they could get free, that everything has collapsed, the justice system is unworking. And if criminal elements feel as though they cannot get caught and that the justice system is not working, then there is really no incentive to and when I say incentive, I use it in a sort of a negative term, but what is the word, Gary? Give me the word. But when I say incentive, there's no threat hanging over them that you're going to be caught and you're going to be prosecuted and you're going to do time.
Yeah, there's no deterrent. There are no consequences.
No deterrent, that's the word. Yeah. So take it over.
Okay, let me clarify immediately. This must be in no way be seen as it's bad police all of a sudden. That is not the case. These were the same police officers 3 years ago. And the reason I could use that as an example, in the mid-90s, the New York police officers, they were known as pigs. There was lack of trust. So it was seen as probably the worst police in the United States. Within 2 or 3 years, through Rudy Giuliani's different things that he would have done, they turned from being known as pigs to being known as America's finest. And these were the same police officers. When it is that people saw the broken window theory or whatever, but he put systems similar, and I would have piggybacked on what I would have seen of systems to measure performance and make them accountable, utilizing that same model that I do for everything in life: leadership, accountability, management, and measuring performance, that LAMP model. And by doing that, the same police officers that were known as pigs became known as America's finest. The same thing happened here in Trinidad and Tobago. So when I took over as Commissioner of Police, the public trust and confidence was 14%. I realized immediately that for us to transform the police service I have to build public trust and confidence. Without that, there's no way you could reduce crime. That is impossible because the citizens' trust is critical. There's no such thing as the perfect crime. So you have to find a way to get the citizens to believe in the police, buy into them, understand that they are not above the law. The police, I had to do, it took immense training. I brought in NYPD, trained the officers in public service, customer service training, put in systems to measure their performance, make them accountable. To 59% from the lowest ever to the highest ever. Now it's even lower than that. I think it's 8%. And people are now condemning the police service, but it is not. It is the leadership, because the systems we put in place to turn it to 59% was not a Gary Griffith thing. There were specific systems to make them accountable. So crime is a product of opportunity. The greater the deterrent, the less likelihood persons would commit a crime because there's a greater possibility of them being apprehended. It's the same thing with police officers. Let's not fool ourselves to believe that the police service, you're supposed to be immaculate and without any degree of negativity. Police officers come from society. They are citizens who initially citizens that came from a society. They are expected to be at a higher standard, which is why there are checks and balances to ensure that. But if they came from society, it means that you're going to get rogue police officers, regardless of what. No police service in the world will not have rogue police officers. What you have is you put systems to prevent anyone from believing that, hey, I could try to bribe someone for firearms. I could take my vehicle above the speed limit. I could cover a drug block. When you put those things in place, it prevents them from believing they have that opportunity, because the most dangerous thing is to give an ignorant person authority, because they will use it and abuse it. And that is what is happening. The few police officers are now seeing the opportunity to yet again go back to what they were doing before. The few of them involved in criminal activity, controlling drug blocks. We took so many of them away from that. There's a difference between intelligence and evidence. We have intelligence to verify that they are guarding drug blocks. They're using police vehicles to escort criminals. I take them away from that. I send them in somewhere to do admin. You don't want to be polygraphed in Cedrus or wherever because I'm asking you to allow illegal drugs and weapons. Okay, I'll send you to in the middle of Trinidad and Tobago, where there's no water, and put you in behind a desk. All of these people, they put right back in the same positions after I left. So they know what they were doing. So as it pertains to public trust and confidence, it can turn around. But again, that has to do with to shut down and remove all of these systems. The online reporting was a critical element. That online reporting and the 482 Gary. The average police officer will know if I stop Marsha in a roadblock and I decide to be unprofessional or aggressive with her, next thing I do, she'll call 482 Gary and you're up in the commissioner's office. No police officer would go in public now because they know there is going to be a deterrent. When you had the online reporting, police officers knew that I could now report you, and immediately I will face the consequences. That is what caused public confidence to increase. Not that the police officers transformed overnight, but the few police officers that would be involved in this knew that there were consequences, there was a deterrent. When you remove all of that, then you have the problem. So going to the other aspect now with police officers with cases that will collapse. That has been a major avenue that has caused crime, because the criminals know, you catch me, you arrest me, you charge me, 90% chance the officers are not going to turn up in court. It took me a year and a half to change that. And police absenteeism moved from a reduction of 83 to 93% in each one of the 9 or 10 divisions. There was actually a special commendation I got from the outgoing Police Service Commission because of that. And how it was done? Simple. You can't have the guards guard the guards. So I brought in civilian attorneys that you will see similar to what you see in Blue Bloods and other shows. Civilian attorneys separate and apart from the police officers. Before, I experienced only police officers being involved in prosecution, and these would be police officers that would have probably a first degree going up against hardened defense attorneys. They were losing cases. They didn't have the capability, and some of them were actually covering for the police officers. So by putting civilian attorneys to work and monitor and have oversight for the other police officers in all the cases, played a big part towards ensuring we will do the best that is possible to ensure full prosecution. Secondly, there will always be situations where police officers may be absent, they will be ill, death, relief, retirement. So what we did is put a backup police officer to ensure that if at any time that officer is unable to attend the case, there's already another officer there prepared to attend the case. And the third was making sure that there was accountability. You fail to turn up, I'm going to bust your throat. You will be suspended. And officers knew that because every week I asked I think he died just a few days ago. That was ACP Prague. And I want a list of all the police officers who will be absent from cases, and we will deal with them. And that is how you dealt with it. So you had civilian attorneys, you had the backup police officers, and you put consequences for officers who do not attend. These three things, Earl and Old MacDonald shut it all down, all three. So it has gone back to police officers just wouldn't come to court. Nothing has happened. By now, Earl Christopher should have stated that the officers who were involved in prosecution that did not show up for those two matters should be suspended immediately. But nothing is going to be done. And that is why I will say that these things are happening, because there are no consequences, there are no deterrents. And because of that, the few rogue officers or corrupt officers or incompetent officers will now come out. It is totally unfair to these 12 officers with this case collapsing, because whether they were guilty or not, the court of public opinion will say you got away based on a technicality, which is unfair to them and their family. It is unfair to the police service, because you should to them, and if they are found guilty, they face the consequences, or clear them to show that the case was null and void in the first place. But when what happened, it shows incompetence at the highest level, and there's nobody else but is to be responsible other than the office of the Commissioner of Police.
You said, Gary, earlier, they know what they're doing. I wrote it down because you were saying that there were some officers who, you don't want to take a polygraph, etc., and so you would have moved them. You would take one from Cedros, put them in the middle where there's no water, etc. But when you left, they put them right back there. I don't want to get, you'd have to be careful. I mean, scandal, whatever. But why do you think that they're doing this? It cannot be incompetence. Something was working. You would have moved people away from certain positions, put them behind the desk, etc. And I mean, you said they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Is this some sort of collusion to help the criminals?
It was big. We would have seen it with Randy Burroughs. We saw it with Dwayne Gibbs, and then myself. Anytime there's a commissioner of police that is willing to go in there and clean up the place, you're stepping on toes. You're stepping on big business. The firearms was a massive, massive situation that I put an end to, because what was happening, remember, supply and demand. The harder it is for you to get a firearm, the more you're going to pay me. When I opened the market, for want of a better word, to make it easier for persons to get a firearm, you realize, hey, hello, Keith, Fitzy, here what Gary, and foolish politicians took the bait. 3 years of investigations, you can't find one police officer to be charged for anything based on the foolish claims by Stanley John report and the audit. After 3 years, 500,000 police hours used. So there would be police officers that I would have affected in a big way. We had police officers controlling drug blocks. We had police officers using their vehicles to escort transportation contractors without being done through the police service. We had police officers using the police vehicles to be involved in criminal activities. So when I put an end to these things based on intelligence, because people say, well, why didn't I arrest them? There's a difference with information, intelligence, and evidence. When you have the intelligence to verify what they were doing and you shift them, then I have affected big business of these individuals who are accustomed making lots of money outside. The biggest one was overtime. It was a $300 million in overtime corruption. We had a couple of hundred officers working 24 hours a day, 30 days a week, and being signed by corporals, sergeants, superintendents, inspectors. And then, so you can't charge them for a criminal act. But common sense would dictate it is impossible that these guys were working. So instead of making $10,000 a month, you're making $70,000 a month. That's $60,000 plus by a couple hundred persons every month. Do the maths. I put an end to that. So I affected it. So instead of me getting 10,000, 70,000, this Griffith comes now and I get him back what I was supposed to get. How dare he? Fitzy, Keith, here now, and that is how it works. And when politicians take stupid bait, so the rogue elements in the police service, which would have been a very small amount, I heard the big business, whether it was overtime corruption, whether it was firearms, whether it was controlling drug blocks, using police vehicles to escort. And doing these, and then even police officers who were lazy, who did not want to attend court, who probably would be working with the criminal, deliberately sabotage the case. When I suspend you, when I deal with you, you're upset. So as happened with Dwayne Gibbs, you call, they whisper to Anna and Randy Burrows, you do a Scott Drug report, Gary Griffith, let's keep so-and-so. So that is what usually happens, which is unfortunate, but all of the things that we would have put in place recently, within 3 years, to put an end to police corruption, to put systems to measure their performance, make them accountable, make sure that there are consequences. They have removed all of that, and that is why we have seen public trust in police service from 59% to 8%. People who claim that crime went down under my watch because of COVID, I wonder if they're going to say now that COVID is what caused police confidence to be so high then, and now it's so low.
I wonder who you're throwing that for. Anyways.
No, that was just done based on ignorance at the highest level by people. I'm not going to call Kamala's name, but when it is you could say COVID, did you do a poll? Did you speak to a criminal and say, why did you stop killing people? New York, Boston, Detroit, LA, Chicago, almost every city in the United States, crime went up because of COVID. Same with Jamaica and Guyana. So I guess the criminals missed the Kamala's comment that COVID is what, just like sunlight killed COVID, criminals didn't commit crime because of COVID. And then after COVID, crime actually started going down in these places. So all the criminals in those places probably missed Kamala's memo. And what was interesting is that during COVID, during the state of emergency, during the public health regulations, during the curfew, after I left in October and November, when all of those things still took place, it was the first and third highest number of murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So I guess the criminals just didn't decide to study Kamala's memo when she claimed that crime went down because of COVID. But she wants to be the chair of the next National Security Council. Okay.
So I'm going to, there's a comment from Mika Ray. Erla's appointment has been the single greatest failing of this current administration. They didn't even bother to put someone competent, a slap in the face to the average citizen. And I mean, I guess, and you would have also put out an media release, it was a few days ago. Okay, I'm seeing someone is sending me a message here. I'm going to pull that up just now. But you spoke about you welcome the new police service commission. And we spoke about that a little bit, because, and never forget the poor decisions of the previous one that led to unprecedented levels of crime. So I guess you spoke about it a little bit. The link between political interference with these service commissions. How do you suggest, I guess, is that only constitutional reform? How do we fix this issue of these service commissions?
Well, definitely with the police service commission and the selection of the commissioner of police, the easiest thing is to go back. Sometimes when something is working, they try to fix it. If you have the system through, you select an international body, when you do that, it eliminated any political interference. So when KPMG selected Penn State, I think it was, and Penn State had all of these qualified experts. There was a UK guy there who selected about 20 other commissioners around the world. And they did the psychometric testing, the polygraph testing, role fit, mock media conference, essay, operational report. Erla failed miserably in each one. It was there. So Judith Jones and Maxine King and company, you up to this day, I challenge them, explain how someone could not come in the top 20 and now she plays first. So the best way to deal with selection of the police commissioner is not to have a prime minister who handpicks a president who will then handpick a police service commissioner. You know what is going to happen there. What should it go back to the international experts? So when I got the highest number of points on the merit list, and let me show you how dangerous this is. When I got 82%, I got more points than anyone else who applied for commissioner. The then police service commissioner that was appointed by the UNC, that was Dr. Gomes and company and Martin George and Commodore Franklin, and no one will ever ask them, how could Gary Griffith get 82%? Erla gets 52%. Gary gets more points than Stephen Williams and Harold Phillip, yet you place Gary fourth in the merit list. That again shows. So the UNC appointed, now remember the UNC didn't vote for Gary Griffith, so I just want to show you the point here. So the UNC did not vote for Gary Griffith as commissioner. The UNC had a previous police service commission who I went through the process with. I get 82%, more than everybody else, yet they placed me fourth in the merit list. So it meant that all of the points that would have been done by the qualified experts to say Gary Griffith got the highest, beaten everyone, the police service commission say, okay, yeah, but we'll still put him forward because we feel so. And that Police Service Commission was handpicked by the UNC, who did not vote for me. So it works both ways. So let us not, people who want to be anti-PNM, it worked both ways as it pertains to Gary Griffith. A political party that did not vote for me in Parliament handpicked a Police Service Commission that ignored the points to place me forth. And then you have another political party who had a problem with Gary Griffith because he was staying firm on doing what was right. They decided to change the Police Service Commission, and that Police Service Commission wouldn't put Gary in the top 3, even though the people who came first, second, and third, he beat by over 20% by the qualified experts before. So the only way to do it is to go back to the international experts, and when they select it, the Police Service Commission must not have the opportunity to do what Dr. Gomes and Martin George and Commodore Franklin did, was to say, I'm going to ignore the points and just put who I feel, based on my own curry favor perception that I don't care if the international experts said Gary should be highest, I'm going to put him forth. That is the best way to find the best person for the job.
Yeah, well, I guess that depends on people doing the right thing, doing their jobs properly. So we have good evening, Marsha Walker, Sheldon Roach. Good evening to Sheldon. Nigel Marcus, we all know what the problems are, and we know our current administration is very comfortable with the situation as it is. So how can the situation change if all opposing voices are not willing to work for betterment? Don't answer that just yet, because that's kind of getting into your role as NTA political leader rather than former commissioner of police. And there's a question that's coming from the audience. Can you ask Mr. Griffith, what is his view on absorption of SRPs in the regular TTPS of police officer, especially those of us who are qualified professionals, example, attorneys at law?
Well, that is what I actually did. I started selecting persons, horses for courses, people who are highly qualified. You will see it. You know, we love to watch CSI, SVU, Blue Bloods, Chicago PD. You will see persons who look like they cannot hold a weapon. They're totally lost as it pertains to operations, like Erla, but that's our next story. But because they are highly qualified in forensics, in DNA testing, in legal aspects, in human resource, you turn them into SRPs. And because you have these experts now who may not fit the bill of going on the beat and arresting persons and being able to shoot at the drop of a pin. But they have that expertise, so you turn them into SRPs to assist the other police officers. I started doing that. And then there were about 1,000 that I already packaged to have them absorbed into the police service. That was there. It was going to take place within 6 months before my departure. And it was shelved again. Because my concept is we have people who are SRPs for 10, 12 years, who have proven their worth, and they're remaining as constables. And then you have other persons now who will now come into the police service as a constable. And after 3-4 years, they are now going to be senior to the SRP because he's an SRP. And then sometimes the SRP may be a sergeant, and the other police officer might be a corporal. Say, I don't listen to you because you are SRP. It had so much conflict with that SRP situation. So my take on it was those persons who were there for so long, absorb them into the police service before we start just bringing in new recruits. And then after a few years, some of these recruits will now be even senior to these SRPs who have been there, tried and tested. It was there. I sent the document. I think it was sent to cabinet. We did the whole thing. So it would have taken a few months left to package the officers who, because not every SRP are going to turn into a regular. I did proper check-in to make sure those officers who will fit the bill can come across. And yet again, one of 100 plus policies, programs, units, technology, it was shelved.
So this person seems to be an attorney at law, right? How does that work? I mean, I have no idea. Forgive my ignorance on the topic. So he's an SRP, but he is an attorney at law.
Yeah.
It sounds like he doesn't want to be absorbed into the regular TTPS.
Right. So they'll have those as well. But I'm speaking about those officers who are there as regular officers working 20, 25, 27 days a month as SRPs, waiting to be regularized, waiting to go into the regular. And it is something that is expected because you spend so much time. The same thing happens in the Defense Force. If you're in the reserves and you spend so much time in the reserves, you can be absorbed into the Defense Force. So there was that aspect, but there's the others, as I mentioned initially, that has to do with experts in specific fields that you turn them into SRPs. So with that now, it gives them the opportunity to be involved in criminal investigations, forensic testing, DNA testing, social media monitoring unit, gender-based violence, human resource, admin, finance, forensic, white-collar crime, cyber crime. So there are so many things. We have passed the stage of a police officer feeling that you must go through recruitment for 6 months to be able to help the police service. It does not work that way anymore. There are many young persons who are very skilled in technical aspects that the average police officer will never have that capability. So by bringing these experts into the units of the police service, it enhances the standard of those units, whether it is the white-collar crime unit, DNA testing, forensic, human resource, IT, and you bring them in now because you can't just bring them in as a civilian staff. Sometimes you have to bring them in because you have to allow them the capability to be involved in certain aspects of investigations. The only way you can and should do that is if they are part of the police service and not just civilian staff. And that is why it is we were making these specific persons SRPs. There was one, in fact, I brought in through the business sector. This guy was a very senior officer in LA. And as soon as I brought him in, there was fight down by senior police officers. They did not want him because the things that he was doing, the man, after 6 months, he left. He couldn't handle it anymore. And he was doing so much. This was true, Mr. Nigel Selena and others in the business sector. We were very fortunate to get this individual. And he couldn't believe the fight down he was getting. The same fight down that happened with Dwayne Gibbs and Iwatsky, and they ran. But they couldn't try that fight down with me because I knew the system. And anytime you fought me down, I will fight you back. But that is what they did with him, and he ran.
So let's move on. So switch caps a little bit to now political leader. So how can the situation change if all opposing voices are not willing to work for betterment? And I have asked you that before, and I mean, you're clearly going ahead because you've named San Fernando West, you've named Toco Sangre Grande. Diego Martin West is not a marginal, though I believe it's very winnable by someone like NT and Paul Nahus. You've named St. Joseph. I'm trying to go through in my head all the different marginals. Did you name Tunapuna?
Yes, St. Joseph, Tunapuna, Lupino, Aruca,
Barataria,
Sama Barataria, San Fernando West, Chaguanas East, Toco Sangre Grande, Arima. So every marginal.
You've named some very critical seats.
Yeah.
Certainly not PNM strongholds. They are up for grabs. I don't think that the UNC, I'm really sorry about Arima, I'd be honest, because I think that Jazzy would have done so much work inside of the UNC. And I think Flora is the constituency coordinator for Arima. And I've seen the work that Arima has done. I don't know if Jazzy has that work or whoever has the work, but I've seen the work that Arima has done. So it's very unfortunate to see that UNC could not keep somebody like Jazzy. It really, really is very unfortunate. Having said so, I've said to you before, are you afraid that this is a 2007, not 2010? Is this a 2007 scenario? I don't know, because I'm saying it. As I'm saying it, I'm saying, you know what? In 2007, COP won no seats, though they came close. I do actually think that the NTA can bring home 1 or 2 seats.
Well, again,
but if it's but I don't know if it's. I think 2007. But you know, I'm thinking the numbers in a 3-horse race. I only know the Diego Martin numbers off the top of my head. And I do actually think maybe in a 3-horse race you can bring home Diego Martin West. And Diego Martin. I think you could bring home the 3 Diego Martins possibly even in a 3-horse race, because there is so much non-voter out there. And I don't think UNC has enough to really take away your vote per se. Maybe. We saw it in the local government where Philip actually took 1 or 2 votes, literally 1 or 2 votes. So it will make it clear. It'll make it close, sorry. But, okay, but we're talking, unless opposition voices are willing to work together, things will not change. In fact, I am predicting it will get worse. I totally agree on mutual respect is needed from all involved, but political maturity is urgently needed now. Our youth will get more brutal if things don't improve. You know, Gary, I want to answer for you.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And in fact, yeah.
Well, I
And in
don't
fact,
know. I
Marsha,
mean,
you would have actually.
yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I want
you
to
would have
answer for you, but I think I should let you answer.
No, I think you know the answer. Marsha would have actually won her seat if she was on an NTA ticket, and that was fact. And this wasn't locking the NTA. Marsha lost about a couple hundred votes just because they saw that Rising Sun ticket there. Had you had gone up, which was a mistake, it was a mistake that made on our part. Where and the other candidate for Bagatelle, I think, yeah. We lost, and that is where Philip Alexander's party they got about 100 odd votes, which would have been different. So there are people who, if Bin Laden has a party, they're going to vote rather than PNM or UNC. That's just the way it is. Yeah. So had we gone strict NTA and Diego Martin, we would have won those 2 seats because you were lost by just a. And that is how it is. As it pertains, and you're correct, as it pertains to general election, the pattern is there. If UNC, ABC, XYZ, any political party wants to fool themselves into believing otherwise, the data is there. Let me see how quickly I could put it. 1981, the ONR decided to go alone as a third party. They got 91,000 votes, but it caused the PNM to win by a much larger margin. 1986, ONR joined with the ULF and with ANR Robinson to form the NAR 333. 1991, the NAR broke away from the UNC. Damla Prasad Bisesa was part of the NAR. She lost miserably, but the NAR got 127,000 votes. It caused a political party that lost 33 to come back in government. 1995, Pandey, he won only because he joined with ANR Robinson. 2001, one political party that was the most insignificant third party ever, Ramesh Maharaj Party, Team Unity, got 188 odd votes in Tunapuna, and that was the difference that turned a 1916 one into an 1818. Our government collapsed because a party that had 188 votes in Tunapuna, Moving Assam, lost, and that turned it into 1818. 2007, we'd have seen the COP. It turned into 2615. COP joins with UNC, 1526 turns into 2912. So it is there. The UNC has never won an election on its own in a 3-horse race in 36 years. 36 years you have been as a political party. You have never won any election on your own in a 3-horse race. The only time you won was in a 2-horse race because Basdio Pandey had the capability to embrace what was seen as the bridge constituency persons, the Moving Assams, the Jerry Yetmings, the Carlos Johns, the Ian Gillett's, the Kwaitongs, and so forth. So the COP, NAR type voters saw the UNC as being that. The UNC is nothing like that right now. So I'm not here. UNC can decide what they want. I'm not here to. This party is not here to help to get somebody in government. We are not here to deliberately go down the center to spite anyone or to get somebody else in government by a larger margin. What that we are doing is representing those persons who are not PNM or UNC till they die. And there's nothing wrong with that, Marsha, and to all of you all.
No, and that's the thing. I'm seeing the person is saying unless opposition forces are willing to work together, things will never change, blah, 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 But what is the expectation though? Because I have spoken up against UNC and I will not waste my time if I don't feel respected. That's the bottom line. I don't think that, if I think that I can't turn a blind eye, first of all, to wrongdoing. Similarly to you, I speak up. And if you have to get rid of me, so be it. I go earn an income outside of your political party, And then but we also say, but we need fresh blood and we need another, so we talk, person say we need something other than the UNC and the PNM. So I see that there are options now, so what do they want? What do you want, Nigel? Because I hear that you're saying unless the opposition forces unite, but now Gary, I have told you and I've said it publicly that I don't trust coalition governments, because I think they are a marriage of conveniences. So I hear what you're saying in terms of it cannot be a marriage of convenience. And, But so is it that your position is if PNM has to go back into power, PNM goes back into power, but I'm not going to just get there because we just have to get PNM out?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to sell my soul. I think that was the problem with the Congress of the People in 2010. We sold out. We didn't stand firm. And that is what caused a political party that had 147,000 to probably have just a few hundred now. And that is unfortunate. I am not going to do it. Likewise, I'm not going to be ignorant and obnoxious. I do understand and have to respect the value of other political parties. But don't expect that you're going to have anything known as political domestic violence. You're not going to go in on a platform. I lost 25 odd pounds walking with more UNC candidates in local government than my own NTA candidates to help them. And then 3 months later, you will go on a political platform. Who are you? What you bring to the table? You are a failure. Leave Joe John alone. This is not Winston Dukaran. This is not Prakash. I'm not going to accept that, because if you treat me like that, that means you're going to treat my bridge constituency like that. Having said that, people will make mistakes. Whether it is somebody drafted the speech for you and you didn't care about it, I would hope that she being a member of the NAR before, you will understand and respect the bridge constituency. Stop referring to us, whether you refer to us as knife and fork, the middle income, the whatever. We are a body that we are not PNM or UNC till you die. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. 200,000 regardless.
No, there is something wrong with that. I'm sorry. Maybe it's because you're a political leader. I don't know, but there is something wrong with that, because growth happens through change. If we remain stagnant and if we are, that has to be the worst mentality, to have new information in front of you and say, I'm not going to change. I'm this till I die. You cannot make such a vow. Oh my goodness.
Well, no, I agree. When I said nothing wrong with that, is that they will not change. Just Marsha, they are.
And fine. I hear you that they will not change. So the strategy on trying to get PNM, I used to say that. I'm Diego Martin West. So more than anybody, I understand the bridge constituency. And I have said when people say to me, you think you could get PNM? I say, but I don't need to. You don't understand the numbers. 7,000 people vote for Rowley, 10 on his good day out of 29,000. There are 19,000 votes that I do not need to convert. They are not PNM people. 19,000. UNC can take 3,000, and there is still 16,000 available for NTA. So if you ask me, I'm telling you, I think Diego Martins are the ones that could very well, and I've said it. Nobody, and I've said this to UNC several times, people are not paying attention to Diego Martin. They've never paid attention. They talk about San Fernando, they talk about La Joqueta, they talk about all these other places. But these places need a 2-horse race, because they need the one vote and the 2 votes and the 3 votes. UNC in Diego Martin West cannot get more than 3,000 votes. They can't. On a 2-horse race, they can't get more than 3,000 votes. On their best day, they can't get more than 3,000 votes. So you take Keith Rowley, and Keith Rowley is not getting 10,000 votes. He's not. That was when he was coming out from Manning, and they wanted Manning gone and all of that. So he's going to get the least votes he's ever gotten. You're looking at a 6,000 or 7,000 out of 29,000. Take 7,000 for PNM. Take 3,000, even if UNC gets all their members, and they don't have 3,000 members, by the way, in Diego Martin West, right? 7,000 plus 3,000 is 10,000. That leaves 19,000 votes for NTA. So that's a 3-horse race. And Diego Martin Central has similar numbers. Diego Martin Northeast has similar numbers. So I am saying, I think that the UNC could very well find themselves in a position where, even if they think they put in 41 candidates, you guys could very well take home a Diego Martin.
Well, yeah, it will lift the possibility for the NTA if they go alone that with the UNC. But there's always that. Remember, with the UNC, you will always get 2,000, 2,500 to 3,000. But in 2010, Nicole Diographed, Rocky Garcia, Garvin Nicholas, it's almost identical. It's always identical. The 3 of them lost by about 600 or 700 votes. 600 or 700. This was neck and neck. And the reason why they lost is because the UNC refused to put any effort, resources in those 3 Diego Martins. There was one meeting in Blue Ridge, a mini meeting. There was no meeting in Diego Martin West, Diego Martin Central. No representation or attendance by the hierarchy of the People's Partnership, not even Winston Dukaran. No support. It was Jack Warner alone that worked when they call in Cook-Rate on the Saturday before election to give her a boost. Had they put any effort...
You're preaching to the choir because you knew that I had
I
had to come and ask Auntie. Nicole had to come and step up and say, come, let me help. Yep. Because there was no support.
Yep.
If you want to give the respect to Diego Martin, then why didn't
because the UNC always saw you Diego Martin as PNM seats. But let me tell you the mistake they made. Had there been effort in those 3 Diego Martins, to lose by 700 votes means that 400 people left to shift and you would have won. And in September, 3 months after 2010 election, we won the seats in regional corporation handsomely. But in 2010, you know what would have happened? It would have been 32-9. We would have now had the massive majority to change the constitution to first past the post. It meant Brown and Imbut would have been out of politics for good. But the UNC refused to put any effort, any funds, any support on those 3 candidates in Diego Martin. And that is lack of political common sense. So I am always aware that the artery for the corridor starts with Diego Martin. If you ignore Diego Martin and you disrespect Diego Martin, it filters through into Port of Spain, goes straight into the Sawa, the St. Joseph, the Tunapunas. The Diego Martin is strong. The artery that runs the corridor straight to Arima remains strong for an opposition other than the PNM. You ignore Diego Martin, you're going to get the same result. So when Nicole and so forth lost by a couple hundred votes, it ensured that we were able to win all of the seats from Sawa all the way up to Arima, except for one of the seats. But the Sawa, the St. Joseph, the Tunapuna, the Lopino Bonaire, the Aruka Maloney, the Aruka, Davide Amira, Arima, all of those seats, we want everything in the corridor because we want Diego Martin. You ignore Diego Martin, you weaken your chances in the corridor. You're correct.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're very close to a general election. It's constitutionally due, even if they run all the way to September. That is still very close. We are within the 12-month period now, so we can't say we are in an election year. I don't know what's going on with you and because I see you put Rowley's biggest nightmare, but you might be Rowley and
I was trying to change that. That is something I put with for months now. I'm trying to remove it and it's just not coming out.
Well, that's okay. But you should put Kamala as well, Rowley and Kamala. But you're also seeing Watson Duke is talking about throwing his hat in the ring. And as I say, I am afraid that it is a 2007 situation where you just have a gazillion parties all over the place trying because they're so fed up, and they're fed up of the UNC as well. And I think that's what happens. They're fed up of both parties. So they're trying to put their hat in the ring. Do you think that Trinidad can survive a third term? I don't know, but I'm saying maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need a third. Maybe we need a third, the perfect storm, a third year of PNM. Because I don't know that UNC is going to wake up in time. And because, I say, right, I think that if the COP, the numbers in 2007 didn't, people talk what is a Kamala mania, and I say there's no Kamala mania. The COP held their own in Diego Martin. You need to understand Diego Martin. The COP was not voting for Kamala. The voters in Diego Martin did not vote for Kamala. They voted for the COP. They wanted COP. They're COP. They're not UNC. No. Had, I think, Rocky and Nicole and you guys continued building in Diego Martin in 2010, I do actually think that you would have won as COP, not as a people's partnership or whatnot, I think so, but because I can only speak to Diego Martin,
Yeah. So when you go back to 2007, the 3 candidates for the COP, Nicole, Rocky, and Joe Perez, I think they will get about 5,000 votes. The UNC will get 2,000, and the PNM will get 7,000, 8,000. So then in 2010, you just add 5 and 2, and that's how it ended up neck and neck. So there are those floating. I think the ultimate aspect of that floating voter has always been in Diego Martin, those 3 Diego Martins, because that's where I said They got 5,000 to the UNC's 2,000. It is the support you will have in the UNC, it is the lowest, which is why the UNC have always ignored Diego Martin and not understanding it. Had you put some effort, again, I will re-emphasize, the 32.9 would have allowed us to now go into payment to have, take away first past the post and go with proportional representation. That will automatically have been the end of the PNM for life. PNM would have never, I don't know why it was not in 1986 when we had 33.3. The first past the post has always been a system to benefit the PNM, because the third parties will always get the majority of those persons in the third parties would mostly come from the UNC rather than the PNM. Not saying that the PNM, but when we join now with the UNC, many of those would go back to the PNM, but we will still have enough. Every time there's a third party that joins with the UNC or the ULF, the PNM is defeated badly. That's a fact. Every time a third party goes on their own, the PNM wins by a larger margin. How the UNC or anyone could think that you can win on your own when in 2015 and 20, you lost in a 2-horse race. You're going to win in a 3-horse race in 20. So I mean, the maths there. Let me add. You got 300,000 votes in 2020 in a 2-horse race, but you had 100% of your base support. In the internal election, you have lost 25% of your base support. Rushton Paris Slate got 25%, which means if you have lost 25%,
and he won in Mayaru, and he won in Mayaru,
so
which is if you lost a very important seat. 1/4
of your support. So if you couldn't get 21 seats with 300,000 votes, how you expect to get 21 seats now with 225,000 votes? Because you have lost 25% of your own base. That base are the, what they call it, the knife and fork, the middle income, the people who are not upon a UNC. I will support the UNC, but if I see something going wrong, I will shift. Whether you join the ONR, the NAR, the COP, the NTA, the Rushton Party, whatever you call it, there are people who are not blind loyalists to the UNC's system. And they will shift or not vote or even vote PNM. That is how it has been. It would be like that. So I am not here to deal with the UNC business. Have respect for us, and we can talk. If it is that there's no dialogue, all of those persons will be candidates in those marginal seats. Jump high, jump low. And whatever happens, I am not going to sell out that bridge constituency. People want, I hear lots of people at the UNC, not speaking on behalf of the UNC, they can't, but they will say, Gary, all you need to do is to give up St. Joseph and give up the marginals and support the UNC. I say, so I have Bubbly on my back or something. So we must go up for the 12 PNM safest seats that they won in 2010. The UNC will take the other 29. So when they get the 21 plus seats that only are UNC, then it will be a UNC government. The country, I think personally, they do not want a UNC government. The majority of the country, they want the PNM out, but they would like to have persons like myself and so forth be there with the UNC, when it is, whatever the reason, whether it is to keep in check or to have representation of themselves, but they do not want a UNC government. Asking me to step down and you will take all the marginals plus the 19 that you have, my mother didn't make a fool. I know what that means is that you want us to go up for the PNM seats and be cosmetic to lure the floating voters to vote for your candidates and all the marginals so that you could have a UNC government. Ain't going to happen. Have mutual respect, then we could talk. Don't have every one of those persons. Christine Nawala Hussain, one of your top MPs, the top MPs of the UNC, is going up for Toco Sangre Grande. Dr. Kevin Saran will go up for San Fernando West. Gary Griffith will go up for St. Joseph. And we have very powerful, you have seen Jazzy going up for Arima. We have some big names coming
Paul and Diego Martin West.
Paul and Diego Martin West. We have already announced to the Puna Commander Norman Dindial Shogunas East. So what could you don't want to repeat of 2007? Have some respect.
Have some respect. You're right. So I'm seeing the same Nigel guy says, you guys were inside the UNC machinery. You should know exactly how it works. You all need to get back in the circle and force change from within. Let me tell you something, Nigel. We were inside the UNC, and it is why we know that there's no forcing change. First of all, what you're asking is that we don't have integrity. We sell out and we just sit down and wait, because she's saying Kamala can only be there until her God appointed time. Then no problem. When her God appointed time is up, I'll return. First of all, Gary, my husband just said, hi, pretty girl. He's watching, so I need to take some time and say hi. But let me tell you something. For the last few weeks, let me sell him out on TV too. For the last few weeks, he walk in, he can't watch my show, but he's a Gary Griffith fan. So I want to know if it's really hi, pretty girl you're watching, or if you like Gary. he's always say Gary understands security. He's into security, so Gary understands security. And then you talk numbers. So I think men who are into numbers, he's a technically minded person. So all those numbers and stuff he likes.
Yeah.
So Mr. Walker, catch you. I don't feel you're watching because of a pretty girl. I think you're watching because who are interviewing.
And your brother can't watch. He can't watch now because he's actually playing cricket from a team in the operator side. So he's now the Gary Griffiths team now for all out in the operator side.
So are you leaving to go play cricket?
No, I'm actually abroad. So that's why we're in camouflage before the police decided.
Because I was actually wondering how that worked out. I thought it's in my mind.
We are one of 8 countries in the
How
world.
you bring that to the country?
Yeah, we are one of 8 countries in the world that have that outdated law. We are the only country in the world, the only one out of 200 plus
Even
countries
pink camouflage.
that if pink camouflage is a crime, that a yellow camouflage toy is a crime.
Yeah.
That's
anyway, so someone is asking, what is the NTA chances of winning any seats without joining forces with the UNC? Gary, off the top of your head, how many seats did the COP win in 2010?
The COP, they won 6 seats. The seats that they won would have been St. Augustine.
You don't need to name it, but they won seats. So it wasn't just a matter of they didn't win.
No, they got 6 seats. St. Augustine, Arima, San Fernando West, Puna, Lupino, Bonnier, Darby O'Meara.
But that was in a 2-horse race.
Correct.
In 2007, they didn't win any seats, though they came very close. And was that a 2-horse race, or was that? No,
2007 was a 3-horse race. We got many silver medals. I got one as well. I was one of those.
Yes, I remember. Okay, all right. So but you want to answer? I do see that Nairi is on. So I want to make sure and respect her time and kick you out.
Yeah, I'm gone.
But you can answer. What is the NTA chances? But anyway, you just answered. You said, you know what? At the end of the day, you are going to do what you have to do for the nation. The nation is calling for change. And if the UNC cannot respect the third parties, then so be it. Let the chips fall where they may. Did I get it correct?
Yes, and that is that the one difference we have with the COP in 2007 and now is that the main aspect that many people are going to vote for is their most fundamental right, national security, crime.
Yeah.
I think even the most diehard PNO UNC supporter would have understood that what I would have done as Minister and Commissioner of Police, we can bring this back. So whereas the UNC continues to pump that we will make Trinidad and Tobago safe, everything that the UNC speaks about is what I would have done as Minister of National Security, everything. So whether you call it the damning vessels, the Emergency Response Patrol, the Rapid Response Unit, the National Operations Center, the National Security Special Operation Group, everything was under my watch. So what they're blowing the trumpet is Gary Griffin. So if that is going to be the main avenue, Trinidad and Tobago, you want to make Trinidad and Tobago safe again? Vote NTA. Our talk there, Nairi.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very well.
All the best. Take care.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Right.
Nairi, thank you so much. I'm now seeing you had some question marks. I hope you were not backstage for a long time.
Yes, I was. I was wondering, you have the right time.
I have no control over seeing. And in fact, you see, David, because I sent David a message saying, is Nairi there?
Well,
He
she
said,
just
"Not
popped
yet."
up on the screen now.
No, it was my fault. I thought I had joined and I didn't type in my name. So, so I'm busy watching settings on my screen and didn't realize I had another step to do.
Oh, yeah.
So my bad. Sorry, David.
No problem. Because I have no control over the way things work. Just like you, I'm logged on. So, I'm always just sort of like messaging. But David is such a gem. Okay, so guys, we're off of earlier we spoke about the Salaries Commission, the whole issue of first of all, are these bodies independent? So it's quite David, now you could talk to someone who is part of the judicial system.
Well, not quite. I mean, I'm an attorney and I'm an officer.
Yeah,
but I'm hardly part of the judiciary. Thank God for Trinidad and Tobago, at any rate.
So we spoke about, whether these service commissions are in fact independent, because we were talking about the proposals of the increase with the Prime Minister and the opposition leader and other senior officials. But then Gary came on, so we also spoke about, the Police Service Commission. We saw the collapse of some high-profile cases involving the TTPS. I mean, 2 in 1 week sounds like a lot.
Yeah. It sounds like way too much at any rate.
Way too much, yes. And so, we did speak about that perception that, one, there does not seem to be consequences for the criminal element. They can get away unabated. Two, we don't have confidence that the rule of law, that the justice will be served. There is certainly that lack of confidence going on that we can be protected by any arm of authority, or those that are supposed to make.
I think the more frightening thing is the absolute loss of trust and confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago police service.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's more relevant.
And so that's what we actually had Gary on.
Yeah. So the criminal element is the criminal element, which we want to to certainly put in their place and certainly not be less of a terror to the national population. But if the police are supposed to be the counter to the criminal element, then people have lost confidence completely in the police, and justifiably so. I've heard a lot of commentary in the last couple of days with respect to these two collapses. I don't practice criminal law, so I would just say, as an officer of the court, as an attorney, I want to know what's happening to the officers who deliberately and flagrantly, did not abide by the master's orders, whether it was to bring witness statements, whether it was to say whether the file was by the DPP, whatever the transgression was that I'm not entirely clear about. Yes, a focus is the officers who seem to, at least for now, have walked free, right? Even when there's video evidence of their nefarious activities. But the officers who did not do what they are required to do to have these prosecutions on their way, to facilitate these prosecutions, I'd be looking at them with eagle eyes. And I've heard absolutely nothing from the Commissioner of Police. I've heard nothing of substance from the Junior Minister of National Security or the Senior Minister of National Security.
And that's actually what Gary said. Gary was saying that, what he would be looking for is a statement by Earl Christopher placing these officers on suspension immediately. And when I say the officers, not the 7 plus the 5, right? Because an injustice has been done to them as well. Whether we do go with innocent until proven guilty. But in the court of public opinion, these officers would not have had an opportunity, if they were innocent, to plead their case, to give a defense. So what with the collapse of the case, they're going to remain guilty in the public's eye. It is going to do real damage to the TTPS and the confidence that the public has in the TTPS. Had they been able to plead their case and come out innocent, it might have done something. So we take them away. As you said, the bigger issue, which we've not heard anything about, are these officers that caused the collapse.
Right. So some people did not do their job. And of course, I'm a member of the public as well. The first thing that comes to mind, you gave your colleagues a blight. 12 of your colleagues a blight.
Yeah.
And you allowed their prosecution to collapse. This happens in my younger years when we were doing, traffic matters and so on, and the police would not turn up. That's going on still. There are matters coming up in the magistrates' courts where the police simply do not turn up. And after, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 adjournments, some magistrate gets fed up and throws it out. So it's not, it's one thing if it's a speeding ticket that somebody said they were going to contest and the person didn't turn up. Okay, that's wrong and that's bad. But what about, these more significant allegations of wrongdoing and misbehavior in public office? So I said, and I've been saying it for a long time, I don't know which one to distrust more, the bandits or the police. I think they're going neck and neck now, right? I don't know who's gold, according to Gary, I don't know who has the gold medal and who has the silver, but they're certainly going neck and neck. So that absolute collapse of confidence in the members of the public that they, A, going to be safe, or B, going to be protected by those who are sworn to serve and protect them. That is tragic. Our society cannot, in my view, go very far and continue if that is the state of play, that neither can the public feel safe because of the criminal element is not contained by the police service, and the police service themselves seem to be accused of, well, similar issues. So we talk about extortion by criminal elements, and then we talk about extortion by police officers. So really, well, I mean, poor innocent members of the public, you really have to ask yourself, that's between a rock, not a rock and a hard place, but two rocks.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And the public, in my view, is being squeezed unreasonably so in between those two rocks. And the deafening silence, as I said, I might be short-sighted, but I could hear well, and I'm not hearing anything from the persons that you think would come out and say, well, look, we took decisive action. These officers will be brought to account. There was no way that these things should have collapsed. The DPP can come out and say, well, listen, it's not a finding. We made no finding of the innocence of these persons, and these people can be recharged. But recharge them for do what? So they could collapse a second time? Then somebody will file a judicial review or constitutional motion or something and say, this is, they've been double persecuted for a second time. This thing is happening. So,
and then they get money.
And then they get, and
they get money.
They will get money.
And then they get money too.
Right,
Yeah.
so
It really feels like we are just getting the short end of the stick. This is
the public is not being properly served by those who are sworn and who have, in more than one capacity, sworn to protect us. And that is the greatest of tragedies in Trinidad and Tobago. There was a time when, fortunately, I could still remember that, police were a fairly feared thing. People, if a police officer was there in a uniform, people felt a level of fear. Well, how can you feel fear for people who you think are part of the problem too, right? They're the thing too, right?
Yeah.
Why would I, as a person who is not law-abiding, be afraid of the police officers if I know they're anything to with me?
Yeah.
Right?
It's
So
quite unfortunate.
very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
We have 15 minutes. I know we can't talk crime and we can't talk.
Yeah, I mean, because crime is so topical.
It really is. It really is. And it's unfortunate. And as you say, these last two cases, it's just like, oh gosh, it's like the cherry. I don't want to say the cherry because it's like positive things, and but it's the final nail in the coffin. Oh my goodness.
That to me was that proverbial feather that could break the camel's back, or straw that could break the camel's back. It might, but it's that isn't a good analogy because it's a bigger thing than a straw.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. But it just I think it shows a torchlight. Last point before we move on to why you invited me on. It shines a torchlight on all that is wrong in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And all that is wrong about the leadership, and that includes the government leadership of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, or those who are policy and wise in charge of the police service, because we've heard from none. You have two ministers in a ministry, and what has been said is little better than fluff.
Yeah.
Right. So, as I said, I'll let you bring me back to why you invited me on in the first place.
No. I'm actually taking notes. I don't know if you know that I take notes of when someone says something TikTok worthy. So I write down the timestamp.
Okay. So I'm not on TikTok. So the whole world of TikTok could be going on, and you could be adding things that I said I wouldn't know.
That's fine. But it was, because what you said there was really, as I say, Gary spoke specifically to Erla Christopher, and he said, that she should have been making a statement to the effect that these officers who failed to do their jobs would be suspended immediately. She should have spoken something to the officers that allowed the case to collapse. So it's very similar to what you are saying now in terms of the silence by those in charge as to what went wrong. The heads don't roll in this country.
No.
The
reality is, when we sue for malicious prosecution, that the police have done something. False imprisonment, malicious prosecution, because I don't practice criminal law. So I see the tail end. Somebody has been charged by the police, somebody's been vindicated in court, and the entire collapse of a prosecution, and people not turning up or lying or caught to be lying, and so on. We see the tail end as civil lawyers, and we sue for malicious prosecution, wrongful imprisonment, all manner of things. And you ask yourself, I have heard so many judges in the last 34 years of my practice saying, and we are going to notify the commissioner of police Because basically this is nonsense, that when tested, the evidence of the police was so poor. So, I mean, I keep telling people, I came across this sentence that to describe a police prosecution years ago. It's the Keystone Cops, but the mean kind. That's what we have sometimes, right? So these things collapse in the civil court because people are saying, I want compensation and so on, which the taxpayers are going to pay. And you hear a judge saying, well, this was totally ridiculous, essentially, that, this was clearly a lie. This was clearly a setup. The police officer was clearly not credible, AKA was lying through his teeth, right? Right?
Well, I mean,
and you're going to complain.
I have taken the TTPS to court. I took the TTPS to court, right?
I say, and join a long line.
And the judge basically said, but the law is clear. So I don't even need to give judicial review on this. Because that's what I went. I went to court to say that, I was threatened to be arrested, and denied permission to. I had to leave the
to march or to protest.
Yes. I was having a one-man protest.
Okay.
And so I filed for judicial review to find out whether or not, according to our law, one-man protest requires permission by the Commissioner of Police.
And the answer is an unequivocal no, but go ahead.
And that's the point. And so the judge basically said, listen, this case is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You do not need me to define this. It is obvious. Mm-hmm. You don't need permission. I said, but I have a video of a police officer threatening to arrest me. To tell
for a one-woman protest.
A one-woman silent protest. And you are saying, but the case before him was it's a judicial review. I need written down, I need precedent set. And his response was, listen, you don't need me to tell you what the law is very clear about. Very clear about.
And you see where we have collapse as well. And where we have collapse as well. When these matters come, when you serve a judicial review and the state's attorney appears, or the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service attorneys are there, they should be looking at these papers and saying, oh boy, let's come and concede. The only time I'm seeing state lawyers, whether private sector or in the bowels of the state, the only time they're conceding is when you reach the Privy Council and some white man is saying, okay, we weren't going to argue that we concede that point. You never hear that in our High Court. You never hear that in our Court of Appeal.
I'm wondering, Nairi, if this is a legal form of corruption, of thieving money, because all these lawyers are making a mint. They are, in fact,
not me.
This week, well, no.
spending money. I spending money on the wrong sides. I spending money.
Not fancy like you in front page, but this week I was in the newspaper as having, I had to take again the government to court because I filed a Freedom of Information application to get, and I never understand why we have to go that far. We have a question for the government, just answer it. Oh gosh, you have to answer how much money you spend, just answer it. 30 days passed, they can't respond. This was something that happened in 2022.
So no big digging, no big digging of files.
No, but it's how much did you spend on legal fees? That was the question. That's all you needed to answer.
That's always some sort of closeted thing. Because I have 3 matters against the commissioner. Well, three large matters against the commissioner and smaller matters for people who can't get their FULs and so on. And you ask yourself, some of them, it's so plain. Why senior counsel coming fighting tooth and nail?
Same thing. We have senior counsel and all kind of thing, and that's just like, this has to be some corrupt way of filling the pockets of their friend lawyers. And I say it big.
As I said, and I unfortunately wish I could disagree, because I see things coming to court why my senior colleague senior to me cannot say, look, this has no merit in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had an unseemly position with a matter against the commissioner where a replacement senior counsel, because the other one was not available, who did it in the High Court. So we lost the matter in the Court of Appeal. And when we applied for leave to the Privy Council, the new senior counsel came and said, well, those facts that you relied on to rule against the claimants or the respondents in the appeal, those facts were not true. And having a Court of Appeal judge say, Is there a way we could reverse this? Well, no, you already made your decision based on wrong facts. So, and when I apply, you think that will say, well, okay, somebody would say, well, okay, well, if that's the sort of thing, okay, well, let's see how we could settle this claim, because they're going to go to the Privy Council, more cost for the taxpayer, more fees for people, I suppose, because a senior counsel has now come to admit that the premise on which the decision was based was entirely wrong. The court was misled. The court agreed it was misled, but had already made a decision. This only was revealed because we are appealing to the Privy Council against the Commissioner of Police. So at some point in time, you expect somebody to say, okay, we misled the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal fell into error, let's revisit this, let's see how we can settle that. That not happening. I imagine if some Englishman is at the Privy Council, he will say, well, look what happened before the Court of Appeal, where they had to admit they would like to reverse themselves, but they can't. Court of Appeal can't reverse themselves after making a decision, right? No, we don't have that. So there's a frustration. I won't tell you differently. Practicing for 34 years doesn't happen. There's an absolute frustration. It never used to be like that when I was a younger attorney. Things came to the Solicitor General, the Attorney General's office. If they were not arguable or there was a low chance of success, people did not beat the dead horse and escalate it all the way to the Privy Council if necessary. And you have to ask yourself why. When people tell you, give up the Privy Council, that we should go to CCJ, heck no! I'm one on the bandwagon, heck no! Let white woman and white man, so far I don't see any people of color on the bench, let them far off from Trinidad politics and influences and Caribbean politics and influences, let them make determinations which are truly independent, because we have a loss of confidence. We have a crisis of confidence in our own institutions. The service commissions is one of them. The police service is another one of them. So people are rapidly losing and questioning the independence of the judiciary as well, because you start to look at all of these things that are being reversed in particular kinds of matters. And you tend to think, wait, we don't have bad judges, but why these decisions going this way? And why are they being reversed? Why is the Court of Appeal judge? I felt shame and was clinging to my British passport when I heard the comment from one of the law lords. Well, why isn't the Minister of Finance being investigated? Why is it the Auditor General being investigated? But why not? I felt a sense of shame, because that's a perfectly legitimate question that should have been asked at the High Court and the Court of Appeal level.
And the Prime Minister has said did you see his response?
No, what was his response? I didn't see it.
So he was asked in Parliament, given the law lord saying XYZ and whatever, can we expect that there will be an investigation or whatever into, and the Prime Minister say, I have no idea what you're talking about, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Basically, I am not aware of whatever, but a non-answer, and basically saying, there will be no investigation, there will be looking to no nothing.
But we know there'll be no investigation. We know.
But he's answered. He's now answered in Parliament, and that's that. We have 3 minutes. I saw you on the front of the newspapers. You made headline news. In 3 minutes, tell me what's going on.
Okay, so quickly, the Port Authority and the SWWT are in a level of dispute. The Port Authority came to court on, was that Tuesday now? With absolutely no notice. I got literally 45 minutes notice to mobilize myself from my office to the court, to the thing. So there was very little we could do in answer to that injunction. That's really an ex parte on one side injunction. And they were able to ask for and get an injunction which essentially orders the port workers to cease whatever form of industrial action they think they're taking. So, but they'll have to prove ultimately that they are taking industrial action. But there's a background to it. The background is that there was a written memorandum of agreement signed in 2015, which did a couple of things. One of them was these wage increases, 4%, which is 12% for the 3-year period. That's 2014 to 2017. Notice we are in 2024, never been implemented. And that agreement also spoke of operational efficiencies, the implementation of certain methods and methodologies that would have resulted in substantial improvements in the port operation. But as usual in Trinidad and Tobago, baby and bathwater out one time. Neither did I implement the part with the wage increase, neither did I implement some well thought out ways to cut the wage bill, and most importantly, the overtime bill to the Port Authority. So the Port Authority's wage bill, up to 60% of the wage bill on a monthly basis can be overtime. So this was I don't want to say a plan, I don't want to say scheme, a plan to cut that overtime liability, a plan to reorganize how the gangs would work, to reduce the size of the gang, to reduce your output cost on labor. So yes, more money, but less money. So more money to the people, but less money being paid in overtime. And I say baby bathwater and anything else that happened to be in it, out the door. Never implemented. Right? So 2024, I want to tell you, so if I have a client who is not paying me and telling me to do work for them, well, I might tell them kiss off. I might be disgruntled. I might not have to ask, my union may not have to come to any particular position. I, as an individual, must say, I am working in horrible working conditions. I am have a toilet to go to. This crane ain't working properly. That tire flat, and they tell me I have to drive it, or this is not safe, and I have to go. I might be disaffected. Can one blame a worker? I mean, I'm the ultimate capitalist, you know. So I always say, people, you can't paint me with a union pro person, but I have to say, down to fairness and equity, no. How is it fair that I had something signed off in the year 2015 and 9 years later, you know, ups and say, hey, that ain't good. You ain't getting no wage increase. I want you to go for 2%. Forget that. Well, you have a signed memorandum of agreement. You asked me to renegotiate my signed agreement. Who would do that? I have a signed contract with you, Marsha. I telling you, I forcing you to come to some other agreement outside of that, which is contrary to that. Why doing that? So that's the background picture. I mean, as I tell people, I've learned in litigation, you have to be prepared to lose small skirmishes and battles in order to win the war. So if we had to get that injunction and let the injunction work its way, I'm not encouraging anybody to disobey an order of the court, but the truth will be out. As you know, facts are very stubborn things. They will come out. And it's not going to look good for the government because it's a baby in the bathwater. I didn't implement that, and 9 years later, I tell you, me ain't getting you that. I ain't care what sign. All right? I breaking that. So the bad guy here is not the union. I mean, I am affected by the whatever was going on in the port, and people are demoralized and people are disaffected. And can you blame them? If it is you are counting on your back pay and you increase things to do something, buy a house, pay off your mortgage, whatever it is, send your child to school, send your child to university, what was your story now? And why not implement? I mean, why not implement things that would make the port more efficient and bring it in, kicking and screaming into the 21st century?
Do you have that memorandum of?
Yeah, you have it too.
I have it. This one,
yeah,
that was the PDF that you sent.
Yeah, that was a big PDF, 100 and something pages.
Yes.
Not that the memorandum is only 2 or 3 pages, right?
No,
or 4,
but they,
right? But it's in the bundle that they filed, that I got 45 minutes notice to mobilize myself across to the industrial court. Okay. Right? So in there. So we can I can volunteer to come back and
yes, but I actually, because it's 6:02. So somewhere on TV or somewhere we've been cut off already. So maybe I will actually read that, pull that out, and then maybe we could talk more about the back end. And that's why I don't like to prepare too many questions, because you don't know what you don't know. So I think that maybe the country needs to hear the back end of what is going on, because like you, my Shein order, my Amazon order might be somewhere and everybody's upset. So right now what you find is everybody's upset with the port workers, maybe not understanding everything.
Well, I've mentioned that to Mr. Anizet at the union, that I said I'm a business person too. It's affecting me. But had it not been for this matter, I don't know the backstory. I don't know. I hear 12%, 2%, whatever. I don't know how those things came up. Well, I found out.
You found out,
right?
So maybe I'll have you and Mr. Anisette on. Maybe I'll hear. So because somebody's saying you have to, so we have to go. It is 6:03. I'm going to get in trouble, so I'm going to book you for next Thursday one time. So,
Okay.
and you can talk to Mr. Anisette as well, and have you on, and we can really understand this entire story. As I think
Okay,
it is
so-
fair to get the entire story.
Okay,
Yeah?
so I'll catch you next week Thursday, and I'll
Yes,
speak to
schedule
Anisette
me
if you
in one
return.
time. Okay, thank you
Bye,
so
Marsha.
much. Thank you.
Okay.
Guys, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, Marsha, and thank you for you and your guests for today's edition of Hard Talk. This is Power 102 Digital. Marsha will be back next Thursday for another interesting